Let's go.
No, for the, in case, when we're talking now about film and animation thing.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to
show things?
Because if we're going to have the picture...
Whatever we show, you just put it as a link in your notes.
We can do. There's other ways around it. I watch podcasts and they ain't even got people and they show other things.
I was going to say, well, if this is all audio, we can't show anyone anything.
No,
but you can put...
You can put links in the description, maybe.
You put pictures on top of audio.
Yeah.
You can make it into a video.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you got our picture there...
okay.
And
it should work both.
It goes...
For the maximum benefit. It should work just as an audio podcast, and it should work if you want us.
Yeah, but that's why you need to film it in the studio.
Yeah.
But this is just a trial, isn't it? But you can have simple animation to talk through it. If it's 10 minutes. Like, okay, let's try and make this one short. Because if it's 10 minutes, you could show clips of certain things.
Darren, you need another book underneath yours, mate.
The other thing I want to do with this one is I'll start it. You'll understand what
We're
I mean.
all starting. I've been recording.
You're recording already?
No, I haven't recorded the whole thing, but yeah, I'm recording already.
You're recording now?
Yeah.
Okay,
good.
cool. So one of the biggest problems my customers have is, because I always think customers come to us in one of two ways, right? One is they've got budget and they want us to create everything and make it look fantastic and use all the fancy cameras and the drones and the interactivity and all that kind of stuff. And then the other is customers that have the passion to do it themselves and they want to utilize the workshops that we have. And also, in my experience, what they do is they get an animator or they get a videographer, as you know, in many of our customers now. And one of the problems that I think customers face is when to utilize each form of media. So some people, for example, get carried away with animation, right? And I will be very on the side of live footage in this conversation, but they forget about how important, for example, emotional connection is with audiences, or they forget that if you want to show the microphone used in a podcast, show the actual microphone, how to use it. Like the example I always use in the workshop is when I broke the washing machine door. You must have heard me say that a million times, but I broke the washing machine door and then I went on YouTube to find out the video, and one of them was a really dated kind of sort of a screen recording of a PDF, right, showing it, right? But that's not what I'm looking at. Do you know what I mean? From a learning perspective, right? The other video was a gentleman who had his camera phone out and he filmed the same washing machine as mine, showed me where to put the screws and fix it before my mum came back. And that was really, really good. So I think what I'd like to talk about today is, in your experience, guys, is when would you utilize animation? Maybe start with the animation team over here. When do you think it's best to utilize animation in learning?
A good example is how we actually recruit our design team, and we've done it from when I joined.
That's animators, though, isn't it?
That's animators specifically, yeah. So 10 years ago when I started, we had something called the Google test, and it was a short 20-25 second audio snippet, and I got asked to visualize how I think that should be portrayed. So I had a 20-second audio file, and I just threw some animation that I thought would be relevant to the audio. And off the back of it, I joined the company, and that audio is still used today. So every designer that's come through the business has animated that same 20-second clip. And it's a really good way of cutting through all the different noise to say, all right, what is key to this message? Are the key points being visualized correctly? And if you can overlay animation to key messages, you can actually enhance that message and get the learning points across much better. So, and it's the same the other way. If somebody visualizes a message but they visualize it wrong, it can actually hurt the message more. You could have an audio file that works better without animation if the animation actually distracts from the message. And it's something we use called passive versus active imagery. So passive imagery is essentially when you're just putting pictures up just to try and please the eye, make it seem interesting, but it actually doesn't do anything to help with the messaging. And being able to understand what is the key messaging that you need to get across, so that when somebody watches the video, they're taking away exactly what you need from that video.
And that's when it's done right, when it's done well, it directly influences retention rates, which
Absolutely.
is what we're all about, is trying to make people remember stuff better.
Yeah, because you engage with your brain in a special way. I would say there was study about this. I don't remember what's his name, but we leave the link in the description. And this guy is explaining there is a science behind the connection in between the animation and the recall of your brain, which is much higher. I think it's close to 92% or something like this, rather than somebody just explaining something.
And in your experience, Darren and Stiko, can you think of any projects where animation lends itself better? I know that we use it a lot. Do you know what I mean? And there are different use cases, say marketing, stuff like that, if we're doing like a high-end sexy video. But thinking more specifically about subject matter expert capture, when we do the Fuse formula, the core of what we do, and we go and capture those messages digitally from subject matter experts. Can you think off the top of your heads of any videos that sort of maybe transition predominantly into animation to help the subject matter stay in people's brains?
I think one of the ones that stood out is ones that you physically cannot do with the live footage anyway. So we worked for a pharmaceutical client, and they wanted to basically explain the entire production process of their tablets. So if you take a paracetamol, they wanted to be able to explain exactly how those paracetamol are made from start to end, a whole through process. Certain segments you could use for live footage, transportation and stuff, but the actual inside mechanical aspects of how it was working, there was just no way of filming that. So it was visualizing exactly that production process, but
just
making
like the atoms.
So it was like
the atoms, but
so it was
the drugs,
like the chemical compounds that make up.
Yeah. So it starts off like, this is a video I made maybe 8 years ago, and I still remember this now. It basically comes in as powder form, and it goes through a series of different components.
It's good that you remember it.
Must
have been good.
That's a good, and it was like there's like one section that was like a tablet press, and visual using animation, you can actually explain stuff a lot easier if it's a really complex topic or subject. Certain animations can actually break apart that and make it a lot more consumable, so that when somebody's watching that, rather than the live footage, and animation actually helps explain the content better. And this is a video I made 8 years ago. I don't work in pharmaceuticals, but I still wouldn't know how a tablet press works.
Well, it's good as well, and I think that's where we use like both live footage and animation well together, because Stefano and I went into a pharmaceutical environment and understand what the external, if you remember all the big tanks and all the machines that do the tablet press, and it's not 100% beneficial, but I think it just adds an extra layer of engagement, right? If you've got like a nice shot of the external, but then you can overlay what's happening internally with, the individual microbes, and even just to have a transition from the external nice live footage shot to then
it gives context to the animation.
Exactly. It's telling the whole story, right? It's like, you were talking about transportation. It's like, oh, okay, we can actually film the transport of the chemicals into the lab, and then when we get to a place of needing animation, we have that in our arsenal. I think that's really good. The fact
you guys did a really complex 360 tour at one stage.
Yeah, and there was mixing all the elements that we can offer, really, because it was an interactive 360 tool where, the interactivity was, clicking on the interactive button, you're gonna show like an animated video that explains that section, and then sometimes there is a live footage.
So it was like a virtual tour through.
Yeah, it was like Google Maps. It was like Google Maps. You go around the factory, and then there's again instances where you can click on and show the machine moving with live footage, and then there's another video that animates the compounds that's the chemical compound reaction. Again, I'm not a scientist, but the chemical compound reaction that's happening inside to create it.
I think it's nice when there's a good balance. I think we've got, not to sound arrogant, but we've got good at that, because I think a lot of customers sometimes use animation in the wrong way. Like, say, for example, you must have seen like SCORM courses where they're trying to show like someone not abiding by HR, for example, and it is, Dave comes into the office and he is causing trouble, and and you see it like that. And like, don't get me wrong, it's like it's not a touchy subject, but you need to do it tastefully. Do you know what I mean, with stuff like that? And I think sometimes it can be like quite patronizing, because you must have seen like those videos that are like generated by a machine, and it is just little characters and the little speech bubbles and all that kind of stuff. But like, that is, in my opinion, not using it right. Like, say, for example, when we've had to deal with subject matter that needs to be dealt with sensitively, but utilising live footage, like we've got a project going on at the moment where we're trying to show someone how they shouldn't behave in a meeting, right? And the customer's original idea was to have a fully animated video, which takes away all of the human emotion about it, all of the raw emotional aspect of it, which I still think as an ex-videographer, filmmaker, whatever, still has its place in learning. Do you know what I mean? So my proposal there to convince the customer to think differently is to use actors, to portray that in a certain way, and then have animations to support in between the learning objectives and stuff like that. But the thing is, with live footage as well, also has its limitations with learning. Like, if you were to just purely have live footage, it's very hard to retain all of the audio-based information from a subject matter expert. Say, for example, if you had a subject matter expert speaking for 10 minutes straight, and you had say they were talking about a microphone, right? And you didn't cut to the microphone, or you didn't you're talking about the wires inside, and you wanted to animate how the current runs from the microphone to the microphone machine and all that kind of stuff. So I think the hybrid approach at its core, 360 tools and everything aside, I still think is the best way to learn stuff from subject matter experts.
100%. And I think it's as you said, the mixing these two media, it's great. For example, when you got somebody talking to a camera emotionally about something that is very important to their business. So, for example, like, I don't know, what they believe in and the challenges. It's very good in the camera because you capture their emotion. But then again, if you use a little bit of animation to enhance this abstract concept, like saying a challenge, how do you portray the challenge? And you can have, I don't know, a little ball and, that has got to jump a gap. Yeah. That's a challenge to me. And are you going to do it? What are the tools that are going to make you overcome the challenge? Okay, and the guy has got a rope. And this little animation
to climb,
to climb, or like, not to jump. Don't do it.
But I think that's such an important example as well, because you've obviously there's that old saying of a picture's worth 1,000 words, and if someone says the word challenge to you, you really, like, without thinking about it, you have to sit there and think about it and understand what that word means. But the fact that when you put that animation next to it, instantly becomes a lot more sticky. And that's where the retention comes. You said about earlier about there's like stats and stuff and data that shows the retention increasing in engagement and stuff, and that's literally it.
I think it goes to your point about people being passionate. Like, it's like one of the core parts of the content strategy is like the journalistic approach. Like, we try not to script anything if it can be avoided, and we try and convince every single customer to not script anything, which is scary. I think some customers are scared of it because they don't, especially in the bigger companies, they don't know what they're going to say. They want to have pure control over everything, right? And Dale, how much I despise teleprompters. Like, we go to places before and they've got sent off a script and they're like, oh, can you put it on the teleprompter? And I just say, we haven't got one. We have, but just tell me we haven't. And then to go there and capture the passionate messages from someone, that's when the passionate live footage message supported with animation is key. Because if you do, it always reminds me of that guy from The Simpsons, Troy McClure. The guy's like, you may remember me from such videos as da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, nah, I don't want to do that. And the thing is, if you can find a subject matter expert who cares about what they're talking about, it engages with your audience far, far more than a teleprompter. I've been to loads of companies, and before we've gone in there and collaborated with them and supported them, or they've utilised Fuse to the best of its possibilities, they are pushing information at people. They're not being considerate about their target audience, taking into consideration how they learn at home, and not understanding how the brain engages with everything that we're talking about here. And I think, when we get customers to either collaborate with us and we make the content for them, or they embrace the way that we do things and they do it in their business, I think that's when learning becomes very much a more organic, faster, cost-effective way of delivering learning, across any organization.
It's so much more impactful as well. It's like, back to your point, like, and focusing for a bit on live footage and the emotional aspect and stuff, it is a process. It's like we're like, when we do the workshops and stuff, we say all the time, it's like, we don't expect this to happen overnight because these people aren't used to it. It's a complete change in the way they usually do things. And that's where I think, like Ryan and I, when we go on stuff and we work with people, it is, bringing the skills of not just videography and the technical stuff that I really enjoy about setting kit up and getting a lush shot, is about working them on the emotional level. Because like Ryan, there's been plenty of times that you've had to pick someone up and say, can you maybe say that in a different way, or work with them to direct them almost, especially when we're talking about using actors and stuff and the behavioral things. And that's, that taps into our old craft of that TV and film, like creative, and bringing those other roles into that live footage aspect, not just capturing it live, but working behind the scenes and working with
and I think it's about working with them beforehand.
Definitely.
I've done this for so long. Like back in the day when I used to do it, I'd just rock up. I wouldn't know the subject matter expert and stuff like that, and just sit in front of them and ask them questions when I was like 22. And it's like, who's this? But even now, like you've done it with me recently and stuff, probably like on weekly going basis. We're speaking to customers far before we put a camera in front of them, even if they are media trained. A lot of these people are media trained, but people are still nervous in front of the camera, lights, especially with all the new kit that Dale keeps asking me to buy. But it is building that rapport with them, and which we go through, extensively in the workshops, and making your subject matter expert feel at ease to get that passionate message that can, work in harmony with animation and all the things that we're talking about.
I think for me, watching that process in real time is quite interesting, because there's a lot of tools and techniques that you guys have worked on over the years that really help a client put at ease. Like, there'll be people that have never once been on camera before, and the idea of being on camera is just too daunting. But there's a real knack that you guys have developed over the years that when a client is talking to you, they don't even realize the camera's there, and they're talking to you like they're talking to a colleague that they've met in the corridor, and suddenly it's a whole different response on the video they're capturing, because when they're having a natural conversation with you, they're a lot more at ease, they're a lot more excited about what they're saying, they're a lot more passionate, and the way you ask questions elicits really great responses. Whereas if they're just reading a teleprompter, it's something that's been pre-prepared, they're basically just putting it out there, there's no emotion behind it. Whereas the way you guys approach it is you ask open-ended questions, and off the back of that, you end up getting a lot more exciting, engaging content, but you also get new content that they might not have thought of before. When you ask them a question, suddenly they can be talking about something completely different, and that leads to whole new methods of learning and new experiences for them.
And I think the thing is, as amazing as it sounds, like, it's not rocket science. Like, we can teach this to people, we have taught it to people, and people embrace this way of doing things in their organizations after our workshops. For example, Content 101, which is the philosophies around content production. Film 101 is where we get more in depth. But even like some customers speak to me and they're like, we don't have the budget for like all the cool kit that you have, but we're happy to work with organizations like Dale on a monthly basis.
Send me shopping.
Yeah, customers just go, we've got £500, what can we get? And Dale will elaborate on a list of Amazon purchase list, like how to make their phones be some of the most powerful content creation tools, out there. So I think if any of this is ringing true to you and you'd like to understand more, we have a number of workshops that we like to offer. Some of them are absolutely free. So if you're interested in developing your content creation skills from a live footage or animation perspective, feel free to get in touch.